Tombstone wasn't just another Western. It was chaos dressed in dust and leather. Behind the gunslingers and saloon doors, the production collapsed, rose again, and survived only through sheer willpower. Cast members fainted in the desert. Directors disappeared. Stars nearly walked away. What audiences saw was grit and glory. What really happened was madness stitched together on the fly. Today, we're diving deep into 20 weird facts about Tombstone. And wait until the very end, because the bonus fact reveals something chilling about Doc Holliday that the script never dared to include. Saddle up. This ride's about to get rough. 1. Kurt Russell. Secretly directed the movie on paper, George P. Cosmatos directed Tombstone. But in reality, the film was unraveling. Rewrites mid-shoot, actors confused, chaos everywhere. That's when Kurt Russell quietly took over. He reorganized call sheets, cut scenes, and guided performances. Val Kilmer later confirmed it. Russell was the real director. He didn't do it for credit. He did it to keep the film alive. Cosmatos, hired as a stabilizing figure, essentially became a front. Kurt saved that movie, Kilmer revealed in 2017. Russell never bragged, never demanded recognition. Without him, Tombstone would have collapsed in Arizona's desert heat. It wasn't ego, it was survival. Second filming was a slow-motion breakdown, making Tombstone look easy on screen. But off-camera, it was brutal. Days started before sunrise and ended past midnight. Temperatures soared past 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Actors wore heavy wool coats designed for accuracy, not survival. Crew members fainted. Guns were real. Explosives thundered through scenes. Michael Biehn compared it to boot camp with cameras. Sam Elliott called it the hardest shoot of my life. They weren't exaggerating. Some days, survival, not performance, was the real battle. What looks like swagger in the final cut was, in truth, actors barely hanging on. Tombstone wasn't smooth production. It was endurance under fire. 3. Willem Dafoe. Almost played Doc Holliday. Val Kilmer's Doc Holliday is now iconic, but the role almost went to Willem Dafoe. Producers briefly considered him. The edge, the voice, the unpredictability were all there. But Dafoe was still controversial after The Last Temptation of Christ. Studios feared backlash and quietly pulled him off the list. So Kilmer stepped in, reshaping Holliday with haunted charm and razor-sharp wit. Today, it's impossible to imagine anyone else delivering "I'm your Huckleberry." But for a moment, Dafoe's darker, sharper Holliday almost existed. Tombstone wasn't just casting, it was fate choosing its gunslinger. 4. Kurt Russell. Had to fight for Wyatt Earp. The studio didn't want him. Russell wasn't the clean-cut hero executives pictured. They doubted his voice, his look, even his mustache. Bigger names were whispered, but Russell dug in. He refused to let go of Wyatt. Earp? He saw complexity where others saw cliché. Grief behind the badge, rage under restraint. He proved himself not by fitting in, but by fighting to be different. Without that persistence, Tombstone might have had a completely different Earp and a far weaker film. 5. Kevin Jarrett's script was almost lost forever. Before Tombstone became a cult classic, its script was collecting dust. Writer Kevin Jarrett poured months into creating a historically layered, character-rich Western. But studio after studio rejected it. Too long, too serious, too crowded. Executives believed the Western genre was dead. The script was shelved. Only Jarrett's persistence kept it alive. He finally secured independent financing, and filming began under a tight budget. The ultimate irony? The very studios that rejected Tombstone came crawling back after it succeeded, begging for distribution rights. Jarrett's stubborn vision outlasted Hollywood's doubts. RM of bullets. It wasn't just a scene, it was a war zone choreographed for art. 6th Tombstone, Arizona. Tried to shut the film down. Hollywood wasn't the only critic. When word spread of Tombstone's production, local residents of the real Tombstone erupted in protest. Historians accused the script of distorting facts. Museum curators claimed it dishonored the town's legacy. Letters poured in demanding production be halted. For a tense stretch, city officials even debated blocking access to landmarks. The crew was forced to relocate certain shots and endure scrutiny at every turn. Ultimately, the film pushed forward, but the message was clear. Tombstone belonged to history long before Hollywood claimed it. The controversy only sharpened the film's edge. Not history versus fantasy, but a duel between legacy and cinema. 7. Michael Biehn. Nearly collapsed. During the duel, Johnny Ringo's last duel with Doc Holliday is eerie. His dazed eyes, his hollow stare. Viewers assumed it was acting brilliance. It wasn't. Michael Biehn was on the verge of fainting. Wrapped in heavy wool, standing under Arizona's merciless sun, he was dehydrated and dizzy. Just before the draw, the camera caught him teetering on collapse. The intensity wasn't performance, it was survival. That moment made it into the final cut, untouched. What audiences saw as haunted menace was really a man's body surrendering to heat and exhaustion. The result? One of the most chilling, authentic duels ever captured in a Western. 8th, authentic costumes became dangerous. Every boot, button, and thread was chosen for accuracy. The coats were thick wool, authentic to the 1880s, but deadly in desert heat. Actors sweated through layers, some fainted. Shirts had to be swapped between takes to hide stains. Val Kilmer, portraying a man dying of tuberculosis, joked it was the most extreme method acting he'd ever done. Authenticity came at a price: dehydration, heat stroke, and exhaustion. What looks like realism on screen was a dangerous gamble off camera. The actors weren't just wearing costumes, they were carrying burdens that nearly broke them. And if you're blown away by how much chaos went into making Tombstone, go ahead and like and subscribe, because the next 10 facts dig even deeper into the battles, betrayals, and near disasters that nearly killed this classic Western. 9. Val Kilmer never broke character. On set, Val Kilmer wasn't Val. He was Doc Holliday. He slurred his words, hunched his shoulders, and carried himself like a man already halfway to the grave. Even off camera, he stayed distant, cold, and unpredictable. Lunch breaks, rehearsals, casual conversations, he avoided them. The line between actor and character dissolved. Co-stars admitted they weren't sure how to approach him. Kilmer lived Doc's sickness, his isolation, and his sharp wit until the cameras wrapped. It wasn't acting in the traditional sense, it was transformation. By never breaking character, Kilmer delivered one of cinema's most haunting portrayals of decline, making Doc Holliday unforgettable. 10th, Dana. Delaney defied expectations as Josephine Marcus wasn't meant to be fiery. Casting directors wanted glamour, a romantic figure to soften Wyatt Earp's story. But Dana Delaney saw her differently. She read Josephine as independent, bold, unwilling to be tamed. In auditions, she refused to play her as seduction. Instead, she brought defiance and quiet strength. It wasn't what producers pictured, but it was exactly what the film needed. Delaney turned Josephine into more than Wyatt's love interest. She became a mirror to his contradictions, a woman with her own will. In a movie dominated by guns and grit, Delaney carved space for feminine rebellion. 11. The Latin Duel was historically researched. One of Tombstone's most electric scenes is the verbal duel between Doc Holliday and Johnny Ringo, where insults fly in Latin. What looks like witty screenwriting was actually Val Kilmer's research. He worked with historians and Latin scholars to ensure every word was correct, not just linguistically, but historically. The insults weren't random. They matched the intellectual bravado of the time. In that scene, bullets weren't needed. Words cut sharper. Kilmer ensured the language carried the sting of accuracy. What audiences didn't know was that the authenticity of the dialogue came from weeks of painstaking study. The result? A gunfight fought with syllables, delivered with deadly precision. 12th, Sam Elliott. Almost quit the movie. Sam Elliott seemed born to play Virgil Earp. His calm gravitas anchored the film, but Elliott nearly walked away. The constant rewrites chipped at the script that drew him in. Dialogue was softened, nuance trimmed, pacing altered. He feared the soul of Virgil was being lost. He called producers, ready to quit. Then Kurt Russell stepped in. They sat together, line by line, scene by scene, restoring the moral weight Elliott needed. That meeting saved Elliott's role and saved the film's compass. Without him, Tombstone might have lost its anchor. 13. Kurt Russell. Cut his own lines for Val Kilmer. Most stars fight for more screen time. Kurt Russell fought for less. Recognizing Val Kilmer's extraordinary performance, Russell voluntarily trimmed Wyatt Earp's dialogue. He reduced his own presence, letting Doc Holliday take center stage. It wasn't vanity, it was trust. In the film, in Kilmer, in the story's true heartbeat. This rare act of humility changed Tombstone's balance. Wyatt remained the lawman, but Doc became the soul. It wasn't just an editing choice, it was a sacrifice that elevated the entire film. Kilmer's Doc Holliday became legend because Russell stepped back. 14. Johnny Ringo was almost played by Mickey Rourke. Before Michael Biehn stepped into Johnny Ringo's boots, the role was offered to Mickey Rourke. At the time, Rourke's intense energy and unpredictable reputation made him a prime candidate, but he turned it down. Imagine Rourke's volatility colliding with Russell's stoicism and Kilmer's sly charm. Tombstone would have been an entirely different film. Ironically, Rourke later played Lucifer in another horror western, showing he wasn't done with the genre. Fans still debate whether his Ringo would have been darker, wilder, or simply too much. Hollywood history pivoted on that one casting choice. Instead, Biehn brought menace balanced with fragility. An outlaw haunted before the bullets even flew. 15. "I'm your huckleberry" was the real phrase. For years, fans argued whether Doc Holliday said huckleberry or hucklebearer. The truth lies in the script. Huckleberry is correct. It was an old Southern phrase meaning "I'm the right man for the job," often with a hint of confrontation. Kilmer's sly delivery cemented it into cinematic legend. But the accuracy didn't end there. The phrase was historically used in Holliday's era, giving the line weight beyond screenwriting. What seemed like a quirky flourish was in fact a linguistic time capsule. Today, "I'm your huckleberry" is quoted as one of the most iconic Western lines ever uttered. Proof that authenticity can create timelessness. 16. Val Kilmer's coin trick wasn't in the script. When Doc Holliday toys with a coin, twirling it through his fingers like a gambler born to chaos, it feels like a character detail. But it wasn't written. It was Kilmer's personal flourish. He had used the trick before in Top Gun and Real Genius, slipping it into performances as his subtle trademark. In Tombstone, it added eerie realism. Doc wasn't just a man of words and bullets, but a fidgeting soul masking illness with restless hands. The move linked Kilmer's roles across films, a hidden thread for attentive fans. Not a script note, but an actor's instinct, it became one of the film's most unforgettable visual cues. 17. Doc Holliday and Chopin shared the same fate. There's a line in Tombstone referencing the great composer Frédéric Chopin. It isn't random. Both Chopin and Doc Holliday died from tuberculosis. This subtle connection deepened the tragedy behind Holliday's character. Kilmer leaned into that fragility, embodying a man brilliant, witty, but slowly wasting away. For viewers, the line is a passing reference. For those who know the history, it's devastating. The duel between Doc and Ringo wasn't just two gunslingers. It was a dying man outpacing death one last time. Linking Holliday to Chopin added layers of cultural resonance. two geniuses, both doomed by the same disease, remembered long after their fragile lives ended. 18. The real Wyatt Earp outlived. Hollywood's version. While Tombstone dramatizes Wyatt Earp's legend, reality offered its own twist. The real Earp lived until 1929, long enough to see the rise of cinema itself. He advised early filmmakers in Hollywood, ensuring his myth survived on screen. That eerie overlap between the gunslinger and the new industry that would immortalize him gave Tombstone a strange destiny. The film didn't just retell a legend, it extended one. What audiences didn't know is that Wyatt himself shaped the stories that became westerns. By the time Russell donned his mustache, Earp's fingerprints were already on the genre. Life, myth, and cinema fused into one. Bonus fact, Doc Holliday's real last words. In Tombstone, Doc Holliday dies quietly, resigned to fate. But history records something stranger. In 1887, sick with tuberculosis in a Colorado hotel, Holliday looked down at his bare feet and chuckled. His last words were, "This is funny." Why? Because he'd always believed he'd die with his boots on, in a gunfight, not in bed. That bitter irony stayed with him until the end. A gambler to his last breath, Holliday recognized the cruel joke life had played. The film softened his death, but the truth was darker, sharper, more poetic. It wasn't resignation, it was defiance, a final smirk at the absurdity of fate. Tombstone wasn't just a Western, it was a battlefield behind the cameras, rewrites, exhaustion, fainting actors, clashing egos, and one star secretly saving it all. What emerged wasn't polished perfection. It was raw survival shaped into art. And that's why it endures. It's not just a film about Wyatt Earp or Doc Holliday. It's a story of chaos transformed into legend. So, what did you learn today that shocked you most? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button for more untold stories from the movies you thought you knew. Tombstone. It wasn't just history on screen. It was history fighting to stay alive.